So I find that whether it's on Reddit or on stream, I am constantly talking with people about things like card balance changes, card reworks, or, you know, what kind of mechanics would you like to see in the game? What would you like to see for the future? And all sorts of things that are kind of related to that very similar subject, right? Like, what kind of change would you like to see in the game, or what would you like to see in the future? So, I decided that we're just gonna make a video series on it. I am affectionately calling it The Forge. I thought about calling it my resume for card design, but The Forge is catchy and easy, and it's just something that I can do in the future. So, welcome to the first episode of The Forge. For the first episode, I wanted to do something easy, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at 3 cards that currently exist in the game, and we're going to see how I would tackle either reworking them or maybe nerfing them or adjusting them just slightly to kind of tackle some known issues. So, first up is low-hanging fruit, as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I was just posting about this, it was either yesterday or today on Reddit, and that is Ungolem. So, Ungolem the Listener is a card that is kind of polarizing. There are a lot of people who think that he's just downright overpowered and needs to be straight nerfed. There are other people who think he's fine because in Constructed there are plenty of times where he doesn't impact the game at all. But I think that the real source of his power rears its head in Arena. So in Arena, agility is one of, if not the best attribute that you can draft. The presence of Ungolem in agility means that you're likely to see your chances of drafting him, even though he's a legend, right? Like, if I had to guess, he's probably the most drafted legend in Arena, and then when he is played, he probably impacts the game more than any other legend because of the small deck size in Arena. So, how would I go about addressing this? And I think the answer is actually pretty simple and straightforward. So I would change the card to simply say, summon, put a Brotherhood Assassin in your deck for each 15 cards that remain in your deck. So, why 15? Well, that means that if you are playing in Constructed and you play Ungolem in the first couple of turns, right, you start with 3 cards in hand, and then you draw a card, and then you draw a card, right? 5. If you do that within the first couple of turns, you still get 3. He's Ungolem as you know him, right? Then as the game goes on, he starts to diminish in value, right? So he's kind of you play early, you get a big reward potentially, but the longer the game goes, the worse off he gets. And also, that means that in Arena, you get a maximum of 1 assassin. So, while he still generates value, and he's still, fantastic in Arena, because a 3/3 that you can draw a card from and has lethal for 1 magicka is still great, right? He's still good. I think that he no longer just single-handedly wins those games in this fashion. And I like this choice for a couple of reasons. Beyond just the balancing side, I think from a flavor standpoint, that this adjustment kind of makes sense, right? Because the assassins are supposed to be like an extension of Ungolem the Listener, right? He's listening to what's going on, and he's dispatching his people as necessary based on the intelligence he receives. And if your deck is the population, if you will, the larger the population, the more assassin he needs out in the wild in order to deal with it. And as your deck gets smaller, he doesn't need so many people to listen anymore, so he sends less in, right? So from a flavor standpoint, I think it kind of makes sense. I like the idea of a card that the earlier you play it, the better off he is, and then as the game goes on, he gets worse and worse and worse. Especially something for like a 1-drop. And so the other side effect of this that I really like is that this would be the first card that could potentially incentivize playing with larger than a 50-card deck. That's something I would like to see kind of more of in design, to have people kind of take that risk and reward. Magic the Gathering, for example, has cards that benefit if you have larger, than a 60-card deck, and this game allows for you to play from 50 to 70, but as of right now, there is 0 incentive to play with more than 50. I'm not saying Ungolem would make people suddenly go, well, gee, I want to play with more, because then if I play him early, I'll get 4 assassins or whatever. I doubt that would single-handedly be the case, but at least it would be kind of a step in that direction. So that's my proposed change to Ungulum. Moving on to my second card that I was kind of thinking about reworking, and this is another one that I have talked about on stream and posted about on Reddit. That is Somerset Orrery. In its current incarnation, to call the card bad, I think, would be an insult to bad cards. It is almost downright useless. It's kind of like a weird Hail Mary card where, oh, my hand is filled with prophecies, let's throw them all back and pray we get one off the top. But at a 6 Magicka investment, and the fact that it, uses charges and there's still no guarantee you're going to get the prophecies, it just feels bad. So the proposal that I have is that it would instead read, use a charge, right? Still cost 6, use a charge, you draw a card, and then choose a card from your hand to put on the top of your deck. Now, the reason you draw a card and then put a card on the top of your deck is because it keeps the number of cards in hand neutral, right? You're not gaining card advantage. It's not like Orb of Vermina where you're going up a card. But it allows you to potentially put a prophecy that's in your hand on the top of your deck, or allows you to potentially, search that top card of your deck for a necessary answer that you might need. So it's like pseudo card draw, it's more like filter. I think that cards like this would be welcome. So one of the big complaints about Prophecy is that it feels too RNG. It doesn't feel skillful, right? When it happens to you, when you're attacking in and you get hit with a Prophecy, you're like, oh, he got lucky. And when somebody attacks you and you get a Prophecy, you think, oh, I got lucky, right? So giving yourself some sort of manual control would allow for at least it to feel skillful. You're like, oh, great, I put that javelin on top, go me, right? The card would have counterplay in the form of support removal, both existing and future, so I don't think it's inherently broken in that sense. The other thing that I really like about the card, and this is something else that I had talked about, is the idea that it gives you the potential to bluff, which is kind of something that I think is missing from this game, and for the most part missing from Hearthstone and many other digital card games. Not saying all digital card games, but in Magic and in Direwolf Digital's other card game, Eternal, where you've got instants, fast spells that you can play on your opponent's turn, you can kind of pseudo bluff, right? In Magic, if you leave 2 islands untapped, your opponent has to go, well, now I have to, does he have counterspell? Do I have to try to bait it out? And there's that idea of, in Magic you could, you got a handful of lands. Well, okay, maybe I'll keep 2 in my hand because I want to at least bluff to my opponent that I have something worthwhile even when I don't, right? There's like none of that in Legends. So the idea of taking a card from your hand and putting it on the top of your library is at least a bluff, right? Your opponent then has to go, well, he might have a lightning bolt. Do I want to risk it? And then if I do, what are the results of that? And I just think that anytime that you introduce mechanics that involve player choice and things like that, it's going to make the game deeper, right? And that's the sort of thing that allows for interesting choices on both sides. Do I bluff, or do I just hold the bolt in my hand, or etc., and do I attack into him knowing that he's used it, or do I wait it out till next turn, or wait it out until the charges are gone? That's probably not going to be the best idea against, say, like a control deck that you need to race down. Chances are you're just going to go in anyway, but it's still choice, it's still depth, which is something that I enjoy. So that's my proposed rework for Somerset Orrery. If through some testing chance, right, we decide that the draw card and put a card back on top is too strong, I could even see the card in some version or iteration where it is instead just use 1 charge to put a card from your hand on top of your library. So you're potentially going down a card for the chance at getting a prophecy so that you can play it for free. There's some interesting interactions in that, interesting choices in that, because on the downside, you're not drawing a new card if the person doesn't attack you and doesn't trigger it. You're kind of just time, stalling, if you will. until your charges are all gone. So yeah, could be that version as well. I think that the draw a card, put a card back is probably a more interesting version, but who knows? We'll see. So the last card that I wanted to take a look at is Dawnstar Healer. And the reason I wanted to take a look at this one is because it feels really awkward in the place that it currently is in terms of design, as far as I'm concerned. Breaking your opponent's runes is an aggressive action typically, and there are plenty of other Nords that reward you for doing it. Eastmarch Crusader, you get to draw a card, and the Haffinger Marauder, you get to attach weapons, but those things are still kind of aggressive in nature and kind of promote, like, I attacked runes, and let's keep this party going, right? Let's keep attacking. Dawnstar Healer, however, is like a passive or defensive reward, right? So, in an aggressive deck versus aggressive deck type matchup, sometimes that 3 health might matter, right? So, like, I can buy that argument, but for the most part, attacking and getting the 3 health feels out of place. Control decks that might want the health gain don't want to attack and give runes, and aggressive decks would much rather put in cards that either just attack harder than a 3/3 for 3, or get some other better tangible result, like drawing a card or equipping a free weapon. So, how would I change this, right? To me, I would rework the card to still play off the healer aspect, but kind of borrow from a different healing card that exists in the game, which is Healing Hands. So I would say, when Dawnstar Healer attacks and breaks a rune, heal this creature, meaning Dawnstar Healer, and give it +1/+1. So in other words, every time that Dawnstar Healer attacks and breaks a rune, it gets a free Healing Hands on itself. Now, I think that one's an interesting choice because it still gets stronger, right? So it still kind of fits that Nord aggressive mentality. But it also would still maybe fulfill that like mirror race counteractive void that I think that card was trying to fill, right? So like if you're 2 aggressive decks and you're in the mirror, and if Dawnstar Healer's 3 health gain was meant to like give you an edge versus the other aggressive player, I think that giving it something where if it heals itself every time you break an opponent's rune, you could use Dawnstar Healer to trade, and then when you break a rune, Dawnstar Healer goes back up to full, so you're kind of getting free trades or free values. I think something like that would be more worthy of the epic slot. I think something like that would be more worthy of what I consider to be the subpar stats of being just a 3/3 for 3, and I think it would be a great way to kind of keep the spirit or the flavor of the card intact, but still giving it a more aggressive feel so that it kind of fits its counterparts. So yeah, that is my first crack at least looking at some existing cards, and I hope you enjoyed it. The next video is going to be me talking about potential mechanics I would like to see in the future. I've already pretty much got them worked out in my head, but no spoilers, so keep an eye out for the next video. And as always, I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you next time.